Guys, welcome back to Agora Wealth Management, and I just want to talk to you today about the behavioral side of what I do. In financial planning, seems very easy, I think, as a standard rule to be able to make the best possible financial decisions. But I think that it's very easy to look at somebody else's approach and be able to critique it without realizing all of the moving pieces, and specifically the ones that seem to influence the way that we feel. And so when we're looking at that, we have to take into account that the bigger or the more costly mistakes that are made in financial planning have to do with emotionally based decision making. So same thing as, how would your surgeon operate on you if he, just found out that his daughter was in a car accident, something like that. And of course, you don't want that guy operating on you just the same way. Somebody in our profession is not going to be in their best state of mind if something else is transpiring behind the scenes that's going to compromise the emotional or the mental or the psychological state. So what we're trying to do is remove the emotion from the multitude of decisions that are taking place of what are we buying, why are we buying it, who are we helping, how are we helping them, as well as, looking across the board at a wide array of political factors that come into play. So I think all of these are super key aspects of decision making, but what really separates what I would say is somebody who does this professionally versus somebody that does this as a hobby, maybe their own personal trading, is that ability to remain disciplined in their approach, to follow their systems, to, if you are granting a waiver to part of the decision-making criteria, what are those underlying reasons and how much do they have to do with the way that you feel? So, when we're trying to align a person's risk tolerance to what we pick in terms of their portfolio, it's not just solely based on a score that they gave us 6 months ago. It's also looking at what are they going through right now. Do they have some sort of compromise built into why they're making these decisions? Maybe they just lost their job. Maybe they're going through a divorce, or they have a sick child. So we have to understand that that's going to have a impact in the foundation of decision making, both from the client but from the advisor's side. So when we're going through and just doing our discovery portion of our process, it doesn't just rely on the facts of the moment. It looks at the past, the present, as well as the future, and the ongoing time horizon of where the current position is in terms of time. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind, that something that we're trying to look at isn't just fixed, right? So it's not a standard rule of thumb. And there's also simultaneously a different time and place to make the decision. And sometimes you can only make a good decision. You can't make a better or the best decision. But I think when we're also looking at, kind of taking everything into context, it's a lot of people will respond, well, that Dave Ramsey doesn't feel that way about this type of situation. A lot of it is just completely negative on having any debt. And of course, I agree with that. I think that that's a biblical standard. But at the same time, we have to look at, if somebody has been in debt before, there's a high likelihood that they're going to repeat that same cycle. So a lot of people like to get debt free, but the problem is we never talk about what happens after getting debt free. And so the same thing with, maybe somebody had a good return on an investment, so all they want to do is just that investment. Now, I think that it's important that we evaluate to see if those are repeatable patterns that are presenting themselves, or are they a one-off? Because, I don't know if there is a whole lot of value in having somebody pay off their debt only to have them repeat the cycle and end up there again. And now they're depleted of all of their cash and their liquidity. So many times I see that in what I do, is that people will repeat these patterns, not just specifically those two, but a lot of other ones. And we can notice these small, minute cycles or patterns, and then there's much bigger ones that may take years or tens of years to present themselves. So I think of the value of having an advisor is that somebody can sit back and say, hey, you know what, I realize that you did this just the same way as my friend over here is doing or had done this in the past, and I just want to raise your attention to the fact that it looks like you might be doing the same thing. And I'm not saying that you're not on the right path, but these are things you may want to consider in offering this advice. And if you decide to heed it, that is your own decision. But I believe that is where the wisdom comes from, the experiences, learning from somebody else's mistake and not having to make it yourself. But anyways, I think what I'm really going at here, and not picking on Dave Ramsey, because he does offer a lot of great advice, especially if people aren't seeking out what a financial advisor has to say. However, he does not get into specific situations or scenarios. And I do think that you need a dedicated person to take time with you to intentionally understand what exactly you're doing with your life and in your life, and not to just be thrown a blanket set of good advice, because there might be good advice, but it might not be great or the best advice for you personally. So what I see many times is that people kind of know these things, but then there's also the difference between knowing and doing. And I got to tell you, that separates a whole lot of people in terms of their level of success that they get to see as a result of planting those good seeds. So when we go through this whole process of discovering and organizing somebody's financial picture, we end up arriving to a point where we can give them a lot better detailed advice and specific strategy to implement, so it's not just blanketed. I think that blanket advice can be dangerous, actually. Especially you look at the wide array of financial positions that people can end in, or not end in, but exist in. I think that everybody is in a different profession, a different stage of life. They have a different personality characteristics altogether. So you could have people with a very similar looking approach to life, but I think you want to be able to properly separate and differentiate between different situations and why one person would be recommended to do one thing versus another. So I think, I just encourage people, hey, look, financial advisors are pretty accessible. I don't mind going to see those people or hopping on a quick, Zoom call or whatever, phone call to chat with people, just to make sure, hey, you need somebody that has seen a lot of these scenarios or situations, and I've seen them before they've taken off, I've seen them in the middle of the process, and I've seen them come full cycle. And so I've been able to see the fruit or the lack thereof. So I'm encouraging many of the audience to find somebody that you trust, find somebody that can sit down and give you some time to learn your situation, figure out what is the best advice and how to implement it, and ultimately put you in a much better spot. I mean, if you look at the value created, I mean, any advisor that's charging you whether it's for their time or their services or activity. We're delivering a lot more. I would say there's some that aren't, right? There's always going to be bad actors, but I would say typically the vast majority of us are offering a lot more benefit than we are in terms of what the consequence is. But, you know, engage, like, test this person's advice. Start out with a little bit of, you know, time investment, a little bit of dollar investment, see what they have to say, and then, you know, you'll be able to know by the fruits. And you know, you can also go based off of some other factors that will have an impact, because some things do take a little while to develop. So if you're investing in a sideways or a down market, you may have to wait until that market cycle basically goes full cycle, so you could see if there's any value into what the advisor had recommended. But it's kind of my advice is just that, man, we have this tendency to really want to exist in ignorance instead of just, you know, bite the bullet, go have a conversation with somebody and just say, hey, look, I have some questions. Can you give me some clarity? Push the conversation a little bit, and you know, talk to other people that advisor's worked with and see if he's or she has served them properly. Anyways, this is a little longer video. I just thought, hey, this would be really great. I've heard a lot of, I have two people that give me Dave Ramsey information on the regular, and so I was like, hey, you know, that's really good information. It's not great, it's not the best for these people specifically, but you can kind of also evaluate that as you get to see what happens in the background, or I guess in the main picture of that person's results. So anyways, guys, pray that you have a valuable day, and pray that it is blessed and full of the Lord's presence. And certainly email me if you have any questions. Kyle at agorawealthmanagement.com, and that's AGORA wealth management's all spelled out .com. Have a blessed day and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.